Welcome to the second episode of Redeeming the Time. I'm your host, Jacob Wells, and this is my co-host, my dad, Keith Eric Wells, and we are glad you're joining us today.
They came back for a second one.
They did, and you can find us on all major platforms, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, YouTube. Yep. So, also, we have an email, so if you'd like to send us questions or comments or anything, you can email us at redeemingthetimepod@gmail.com. It will be in the link in the bio. But if you would like to contact us, you can email us. So
be kind.
Yes, and we may or may not answer your questions.
Oh, okay.
On the pod, depending on what the question is. Obviously,
that's true.
So
today will be less than last week. We're covering a lot less time frame. Last week was literally 2,000 years of history, so we are a much narrow time frame this week.
Yeah, so
good deal.
But I have a quiz for you to start us off. I would say
I have not heard this ahead of time, so
I would say that we are movie people. We like to go see movies.
I like a good movie.
I have the app Letterboxd, so if you have that, then I think you're a movie person. And
I don't have that.
Well, yeah, you do.
I
thought so. You did. You went through every movie and was like and rated.
Oh yeah, I did that one time. Yeah, I think I got rid of it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's addicting. But I have the list of the top grossing movies. Can you name me the top 5?
Top 5 grossing movies of all time.
Not adjusted to
inflation. Well, Titanic's number 1.
It is number 4.
What?
It peaked at 1, but it's number 4 now.
It's been passed up since
by
then?
3 more. Yes.
They put it back out so it would be up at number 1.
Nope.
So that means Endgame is number 5.
Endgame is number 2.
Oh, they must. Wow, how'd that happen? Okay. So we got Titanic. You wanted the top 5?
Yep.
Star Wars.
The
first one.
A New Hope.
No?
A different Star Wars.
Okay.
A different first.
Okay, then episode 7.
Yes, Force Awakens.
Force Awakens. So we got 3 of the 5. Avatar.
Avatar is number 1.
Avatar's
it was passed by number 2, and then they re-released Avatar in China to go back to number 1.
Okay, so what do we have so far? Force Awakens, Avatar, Endgame.
Yeah, so Endgame was number 1, and then they re-released. So Avatar, Endgame, Titanic, and Star Wars. Titanic. So you're missing number 3.
Oh, I'm missing number 3. Another Disney-owned product?
I don't think so.
No. Oh, how old?
Last 2 years.
Avatar 2?
Yep.
I think Disney owns them too.
Do they?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So they have 4 of the top 5.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not shaping our thoughts at all.
No, not at all. Do you know, based off of inflation, do you know what number 1 is?
Should be Star Wars, New Hope. Really? It was out
It's
in the
nowhere
theaters
even close to any of the other movies.
40 weeks at number 1. Give me a time frame.
It peaked at number 1.
Give me a time frame.
The 30s.
Oh, wow, the 30s. Charlie Chaplin movie?
I don't think so.
Oh, Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind. Yeah. It's almost like 300 million more than Avatar.
Adjusted for inflation.
Yeah, and then Titanic, then Star Wars, and then Endgame.
The Burning of Savannah is the set of the original King Kong movie. They used that because it looked that. Yeah, just so if you wanted to know.
Nice.
Yeah. My mom's favorite movie, actually.
Gone with the Wind?
Yeah, she watches it every year.
I actually don't know if I've ever seen it.
Well, set aside half a day because it's a long movie. It's pretty good.
I guess we could. So, getting into why you came here, the Bible reading for this week covers Genesis 25 through 42. Yeah. So we go from Abraham to the beginning of Joseph meeting his brothers.
Right. So now we're looking at 3 generations this week, or 4, I guess. We ended with Abraham and now his wife has died, and he remarries in Genesis chapter 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, he remarries at the ripe old age. I think he's like 134 or something like that when he remarries. Keturah is her name. Then it goes into by verse 7. He's 175 years old. It talks about then Isaac and Isaac's wife Rebekah. This is the part where she has twins. She has Esau and Jacob. Now, if you're looking at what do we look here? There's a key phrase in verse 23. It says, "The elder shall serve the younger," and this will set the course for the next chapters and really the course of their lives. They will deviate. There will be a hatred at first between these brothers, but eventually time gives way. We have Esau that's born. He's this guy that's red. He's hairy. He represents the earth. He has they make this contrast between these two men that he has little spiritual interest. Everything is material to him, like the earth. And then we have Jacob. He is one that he has a lot of spiritual interest, but he's not above board all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's where we get this. In verse 31 through 34, we have where they're now grown. Just instantly, they're grown in the same chapter. We don't get much of their growing up.
Yeah,
and
it moves pretty quick.
Jacob, he stays in the house. His brother's out in the land. He's a hunter. He's all that kind of stuff. And he comes in and he just says, "Oh, I'm dying. He's not dying. And he sells his birthright to Jacob for a cup of soup, basically a bowl of lentil soup. And we see here the big deal was, so Jacob sees the necessity of this. It gives a birthright, the priestly rights of the family, and he is, the Abrahamic promise goes with this. So it's a big deal. And he just passes it off for a bowl of soup. He didn't think anything of it because spiritually it meant he just didn't have that appetite for spiritual appetite.
In this chapter, we also see that Rebekah loves Jacob, and there's a love for Jacob, not as much for Esau.
Yeah, there's some generational sin and issues that we're going to see. And as we go through these chapters, I want you to pay attention to those. As you're reading through those, look and see how one sin will go to the next generation and the next generation. If it is not taken care of, we see this. And God leaves all their warts there for us to see. And you've seen it probably in your family. I've seen it in our family. There are some things, if we don't take care of them and nip them, they will continue to perpetuate. So we get to chapter 26. And now we see, here's the perfect example of that, is Isaac. There is a situation. There's some famine or drought. I forget which famine. There's famine in the land. And what does he do? He does exactly what his dad did. Abraham did this twice, and now he lies, tells his wife to lie. They go down into the land, and they say that, she's my sister type thing, and this generational sin comes about once again. It's just interesting how this continues to perpetuate, and to me, as I read through these, it always makes me examine my heart, examine my mind. What am I doing that might be picked up by my children, my grandchildren, and on it goes.
Yeah, when I was reading this, thinking about the HERE method, I'm glad you brought what you brought up. Where can we apply what we're reading in chapter 26?
Because it's an odd little
chapter.
chapter.
Because a lot of times in the Bible we can easily get an application because it's pretty much said straight up. But like in these chapters, it's how do we apply what Isaac and Rebekah did to our lives today?
Yeah, exactly.
And the generational thought process that's good to.
Yeah, and we see
remember.
We don't like to talk about it. We're like, oh, that's just what we do. No, we can fix those things if we have a heart to do it. And sometimes that will cost us. Sometimes that will it will be out of the norm. But we need to do that for our children, and then for our grandchildren. I'm glad you mentioned the hear method. So if you've fallen behind already, that's all right. Get back on it to start with chapter 25 today, all right?
Yep.
And keep going. So we highlight what the Lord's brought to our attention. We explain it in our own language. That's the E. The A, we make the application, and then the R, what is my response to that application? All right, so moving on to chapter 27.
So we're in day 2. We're on Tuesday, and today in the Tuesday reading, we should be reading 27 through 29. So in 27, the well-known account of Jacob and Rebekah tricking Isaac and
this is the famous
blessing.
chapter here. If you don't remember anything about this, is the famous one.
The reason why Jacob's name means trickster.
Yeah.
Or deceiver.
That's why I named you that, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But the conniving is just rampant in this family. And you're going to find it doesn't start with Jacob. It's with mom.
Yeah, she starts.
And then when he goes to see his uncle, it's in him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in their mom. And so we boom, boom, boom once again. So it bleeds over now to Jacob. He lies to his dad directly to his face. He's blind, but he lies to him 3 times to steal the blessing.
Yeah.
All right. So he gets the birthright for a pot of soup, and then he lies and he gets the blessing here. And with that, in verse 40, Esau's crying out to his dad, and he's told, eventually you're going to be able to break this yoke of what was said earlier, that the elder will serve the younger. So this is, and we'll see that come about. But here's the key verse in this chapter, I think, for those as we think about what's a little lie. Well, this wasn't a little lie, but this is a big one. Verse 44, this conniving costs her her life with her favorite son. It says, tarry with him a few days, talking about going to her brother. Go away, and because Esau's hot and he's gonna kill you. Tarry with him, her brother, a few days. How many years does that wind up being?
20, I think.
20 years of his life. 20 years of his life go on, and she never gets to see him again. She's dead before he ever comes back.
Yeah.
All because she wanted her way instead of letting it happen God's way. So there's definitely something to learn there.
Yep.
Chapter 28.
We see Esau seeing Isaac was not pleased with the women of Canaan, and he goes and marries an Ishmaelite.
Right.
That's pretty interesting with the connection between Ishmael and Esau and
how both
Isaac
men of the world.
Yeah.
Also in this chapter you see the covenant. So the Abrahamic covenant, God confirms it with Isaac, and then now here in chapter 28 he confirms it with Jacob as well. Jacob, this is the famous stairway to heaven type thing, the ladder and the angels ascending and descending, and
at the end Jacob vows
he vows to God.
To follow God, yeah.
In verse 20, verses 22, he vows to God. I guess my thing in this chapter would be how often. So he's going to go off and he's stuck up in Haran with his uncle Laban working for him for 20 years. How often, when you read these words, when you get to this chapter, how often does he remember and look back to that vow he made to God over that? It's also, he gives a tithe to the Lord. I know you're saying, okay, a pastor's going to bring this up. But it's very interesting.
2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. This is pre-law, any of that. He's not told to do this, and yet over and over we see people just naturally understand that a tithe, a portion of what they have, belongs to the Lord. It's out of the abundance of that. So I found that interesting. Chapter 29.
So,
go ahead.
A question I've heard is, why does God bless Jacob and not Esau? Why does God bless Isaac? And then we'll see, why does God bless Judah? And why did from an outsider's perspective, Jacob deceived his dad,
right?
And now, but he's part of God blesses, and it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not Esau or what? Yeah.
Well,
what is
the best I can explain that is, well, obviously there's God's sovereign hand in this, how he sees through time what's going to occur. But more than that is what we would more find in Hebrews 11, where these were men of faith that even in our faith, we're going to fail. We're going to fail miserably. Isaac fails. He lies again. Jacob fails over and over again. But yet he had a heart for the Lord. And the Lord is merciful, and he's gracious toward us, and he continues to forgive us. And as you go through this life of Jacob, consider your own life and see how God is molding your life. They give the full picture of Jacob. They don't with Isaac, but they do with Abraham, and they do with Jacob. And you see this molding of this man's life in what was a person that had faith in God, but yet had a lot of warts, a lot of sinful nature to him. Not nature, that's not the right term for it. Sinful tendencies. And God slowly is washing those away and transforming him. And we'll see that and he brings different situations. He's going to need to bring chapter 29 and 30 into his life. Yeah. Because some of us need a little more banging on the head to get our attention.
It's true.
Laban is brought into his life and does the same thing to him that he did to his parents. Yep. And that's what he needs.
Yeah, which is in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Laban tricking Jacob into marrying Leah first, who was, what tender-eyed?
The greatest line in the Bible.
Tender-eyed.
For a young lady that's not so pretty. Yeah. She's tender-eyed. If your name's Leah, you're a beautiful lady. I just but this one apparently was not. Oh, that's hilarious. Tender-eyed, but
the verses that stuck out to me were 31 through 35. Once they're both married, and he worked 14 years to marry both of them.
Yeah.
The Lord saw that Leah was hated and opened her womb up in verse 31, but closed Rachel's. And Leah goes on to have 4 children,
right away.
Right away. Yeah.
She winds up having what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 boys and a daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will find throughout the Bible, the Lord prefers, monogamy, one wife specifically, but when they have 2 or 3, he blesses the first wife. He consistently blesses the first wife throughout the Bible. And we won't spend a lot of time on that. But it's interesting for me in those verses is through the names of the boys, it sort of tells his story. And it tells their story, the wives' stories as well. So they name them. They have these meanings you don't have to know Hebrew to know that. It says it right in the verses. Explains right there with it. And you can underline those, and it explains what they are. Where you've got where we have here Reuben, and verse 32, and looked upon my affliction, and he heard me, and that's Simeon's name, and joined me, that's Levi, and on it goes. And then we get to chapter 30.
Which is the start of day 3, Wednesday.
Yeah. So here the children are born, and completes that up, except for Benjamin. And Laban, he's continuing to do this. Like I said, we always see that God honors the first wife. We have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and they have one daughter together, Dinah. Mm-hmm. And then the whole weird thing with him having his handmaids, but yet God, to me, I've always wondered, how does God bless that? But yet they are known as the 12 tribes, so God uses them in great ways. I don't understand that.
I don't either.
I'm not even going to try to explain that to you, but
because really, Rachel gives Jacob a dramatic ultimatum. She's like, "Give me a child, or I die." And so then Rachel gives Bilhah her maid, and they have a kid, Dan.
Yeah.
And
very
odd.
Very odd. But I'm sure we could do some great study on that. But nonetheless.
Jacob becomes extremely wealthy at the end of this chapter too.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. This is where you start to see him showing his bad character again. Verses 37 through 43, Laban's not treating him right. So how are we supposed to treat those that don't treat us right? doing the same thing to them. Well, that's not the Christian way for sure. And we see here is he starts doing this thing with the livestock that will any of the ring straked or the spotted go to him, and all the clear, clean, pure go to Laban. Well, he intentionally is mating them to create his herd. So he's manipulating the situation to give him the strong and his father-in-law the weak. Does Laban deserve it? Yeah, sort of, but that's not on him to do. So we see Jacob still got a little bit of work to do here in his life. And how do we respond when people treat us poorly? Do we manipulate the situation so they get their comeuppance? That's not for us. That's not a New Testament thought for sure. The Lord would have us leave it in His hands and let Him take care of that.
Yep. So then we get into chapter 31, where God commands Jacob to get up just like his grandpa and go to the land that God had given them. But then we see Laban's not happy about that and comes after him.
Yeah, so Jacob heads home now. He's been up north. So if you're following this, he was down in what is Israel or Canaan at the time. And when he leaves because of the fear of his brother, he goes up north, which would be in Syria, Turkey area, and the city of Haran, and now he's coming back down. Well, now you imagine at this point he has 11 sons, a daughter. He has 4 wives, and one of them's pregnant, and we'll see one of them has become just like her father, Laban. So he's leading all of his cattle, sheep, going south. They're not going to move very fast.
No.
So they get a 3 days journey, and Laban finally catches up with them. And look at verse 8. Verse 8 says, if he said thus, he's talking to Laban, if he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ringstraked will be thy hire, then all the cattle will be ringstraked. Now he says that, but really that's a lie. I mean, he manipulated that situation. Did God allow some of that? Probably so. But Laban comes in guns blazing. He's ready to kill Jacob and take everybody back. And if it wasn't for the Lord coming to, here's a guy that doesn't even believe in the Lord, but the Lord comes to him at night, and he says, don't mess with him.
Mm-hmm. Then verse 43 and 55, I think this was interesting, that they pretty much draw a line in the sand, right?
Yeah.
And say, I'm not going to come over here with the intent of harm, and if you don't do the same. And
exactly.
But it's not a line in the sand, obviously. But
no, they literally set up a landmark.
Yeah.
Says, I won't come south of this, you won't go north of this. And I guess the thing for us to learn in this is, what happens with the actions that we take? Is there a way to look down the path of where we're going and say, hey, this is not going to end well, and I'm going to diffuse this situation now? Laban winds up, just as his sister wound up not seeing her son Jacob ever again, now Laban, because of his actions over a 21-year period, will never see his grandchildren again or his daughters, all because of that.
Mm-hmm.
All he had to do was treat his family properly, but he chose not to do that. So we have this situation now, and they're forever separated.
Yeah.
But God is doing that on purpose. I mean, he sees that, and he's allowing this. But it's a sad end to a family situation there.
Yeah, it is.
Which sets up the next family situation.
Which is one of my favorites. So now we're into day 4, which is Thursday, which is Genesis 32 through 34, and these are jam-packed chapters.
Yes, so we left him leaving his father-in-law. Jacob's leaving his father-in-law, and now he has to face the next battle.
Yeah, which is something he's not looking forward to. He's afraid.
Yeah, this is the culmination of what happened earlier in his life.
20 years later.
Yeah, he has to deal with this. So does he run and hide, or does he face it? and we see some growth in him. He's not running anymore. He just faced his father-in-law. Now he's going to face his brother.
Yep.
But
and
some
we see
great
that
stuff happens during this.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
So he sends appeasement gifts to try and lighten the load. Say, hey.
Yeah,
I love you.
Esau's coming with 400 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's thinking this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
Which is sort of funny on Esau's part. I think that's, yeah, make him sweat a little bit.
So Jacob splits his family into two groups, and so one of them survives, and you can only imagine
who's
he put,
first.
Yeah,
you go ahead.
Well, you see it later on,
Yeah.
where he puts them in order.
Yeah, he does.
And
but the big thing happens in verses 24 through 32.
Yeah, well, which is when he
wrestles with God.
When he wrestles with God, yeah,
Yeah.
all night long.
So God's been slowly working in this man's life, and think about your own life, how God has worked through your life, and there comes these critical points in our life where God brings something to our attention. Do we respond? Do we continue to follow in faith, and our faith grows? And this is a situation. This is a turning point in the entire Word of God. This night, he's facing who he is, literally facing who he is.
Yeah.
And he wrestles. This is called a theophany, a pre-incarnate
version
display of Christ. What's that mean? That means Jesus came to earth before he was born of man. And he wrestles with Jacob through the entire night. And we have this where the Lord makes him say his name.
Mm-hmm.
What is your name? Jacob.
Jacob, yeah.
Meaning trickster. Not just what is your name. Really, what are you? I'm this trickster. He says, no, not anymore.
You are Israel.
Yes, you are, exactly. He changes his name to Israel, which means the Prince of God.
I also, in this book, Joseph, by John C. Lennox.
Who is a brilliant man.
Yeah. The first two chapters are about Jacob. He's setting the stage
really?
for Joseph.
I've not read that.
And if you want to borrow this book, I will lend it to you. It is his breakdown of that night and the account with him and Esau. It's brilliant. And the thing that he points out is Jesus touches his thigh and makes his hip out of joint or whatever out of joint.
Yeah, hollow of his leg, whatever it
says
there,
which gives him a limp. So why does he give him a limp?
For the rest of his life, he will remember that encounter with the Lord.
Every time you take a step, you're remembering that night. And that's awesome.
And he changes from Jacob to Israel. And here's the thing. Now, when you read from here on, you'll hear both names. Mm-hmm. It'll say Jacob, it'll say Israel. And when it talks about Jacob, it's talking more about sort of the physical things that occur in life. And when he uses the name Israel, it's more the spiritual side of what's going on in their life. And God uses both names throughout the rest of Scripture, which is interesting.
Yep.
So
then we meet.
Yeah, 20 years later.
20 years later, the brothers meet. And Jacob is being prepared to be slaughtered. He's thinking the worst case scenario.
He's sending animals ahead. He's like, here, take this. Here, take this.
Well, and then in verse 2, we see, like we said, the importance of where he, who was first, then second, and then Rachel was right next to him, and so
in verse 4,
would you put Emily or me first? I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm
okay.
just kidding.
I'm not going to answer that. And verse 4, and Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept.
Just imagine that.
The relief on Jacob's part and the character of Esau. Now, once again, this is an interesting thing. Just because a man has good character does not mean he has spiritual interest. Because throughout this, Esau has shown to be a man of higher character, even though he has no spiritual interest. And that's something for us to learn and to watch. It should be a shame on us as Christians if that is true of our life. But we all have that neighbor that is great moral character, but has no spiritual interest at all. Mm-hmm. And so we see that here. And this is where that verse is fulfilled. where he breaks
Take
the yoke.
Yep.
Yeah, no longer. And Esau goes off, and they wind up, in chapter 36, they wind up giving us his lineage after that.
Yep.
Then we get to the chapter 34.
Which is another disturbing
This
chapter.
This is an interesting chapter. So they have the Dinah, their only sister, their little sister. She is infatuated with this guy. She's probably still a teenager, if you do the math. And this guy in Shechem, and he winds up sleeping with her. But he wants to marry her. And the brothers are hacked off, as they should be. And they play a trick on the people, though.
Yep.
And they say, well, if you want to marry our daughters and our ladies, and we'll marry yours, you have to
be like us.
You got to be like us and have the symbol of circumcision. Not saying that they're going to do that and follow through. The guys are like, oh yeah, sure, yeah. The guy sells them, and they all get circumcised.
And then 2 days of recovery, and then here come the brothers coming to kill them all.
Simeon and Levi go in and slaughter them. I know I'm smiling. It's just the stupidest story ever. They just slaughter them. And Jacob's like, what are you doing? You've made me to be, just stink in this people. They're going to retaliate against our family. And they say, well, it's our sister. And there's something interesting here. You were asking about Judah. So Reuben, we find out a little bit later, he winds up sleeping with Bilhah, one of the handmaids, after Rachel has died. And now we have Simeon. So Reuben, child 1, son 1. Simeon and Levi, number 2 and 3. And now we have the 4th son, Judah. Judah is the one with spiritual interest.
Yeah.
Judah is the one that is a stand-up guy. And, he does something here, but he winds up being a stand-up guy at the end of it, even though he makes a mistake, and more than a mistake, but he fails. But we see God then honors Judah because of that. And he's the one that his dad goes to from that point on. So I beat you to that.
You
Sorry.
did beat me to
Sorry.
that. Yeah.
You can ask me again later.
No, you can see it throughout the rest of Genesis.
Judah is,
especially when they meet Joseph and
right.
who steps up.
Chapter 35, Rachel dies.
This is the start of day 5, so we're on Friday now, which is 35 through 37.
Yeah, we gotta hurry up. Sorry about that. Talking too much.
Yeah. So they move to Bethel. God confirms his promise again to Jacob.
Bethel, the house of God.
Yes.
This is a place over and over you'll read. And every time they go to Bethel, you'll see what happens there, okay? Remember back, maybe write notes. God meets with them there almost every time.
And then Rachel has Benjamin, or Benani, but Rachel dies in childbirth. And,
That's pretty much it with that.
That's pretty much the chapter. We see Jacob's descendants and stuff like that.
Yeah, chapter 36 is a chapter that's a tough reading chapter. It's Esau's descendants, which become Edom or the Idumeans later on.
We also see in 35 the death of Isaac.
At 180.
Yeah. And both of his sons bury him. Esau and Jacob bury him. Yeah. It's not just one of them. But 36 is the genealogy, the Edomites.
The only thing I have, Schofield has a really cool note here in this chapter. If you're wanting to get something out of chapter 36, he shows it's always the natural, then the spiritual, where Adam, then Christ, Cain, then Abel. Cain's posterity is shown, then Seth's posterity. Here we have Esau's descendants, and then we spend the time on Jacob's. So it's always the earthly and then the spiritual. So something, it's just Saul, then David. You'll see this throughout the Word of God. So then we get to 37. This is my favorite part of the entire book of Genesis. I love Joseph, the account of Joseph. There's more chapters assigned to Joseph explaining his life than any other person in the book of Genesis. Yep. So God has a reason for that.
I think it's Jesus in the whole Bible. The most chapters is Jesus, and then David, and then Joseph, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
If you don't count Paul's
letters.
Letters. So
So, chapter 37, Joseph is the 11th son of Jacob.
But he's loved the most.
He's the favorite. Once again, this favoritism, it's extended to another generation. Joseph, throughout the Bible, you will see typologies of Christ. A picture of Christ, and there is no doubt. Some of them you hear and you're like, I don't think that's somebody's just making stuff up. This one, there is no doubt he is a picture of Jesus Christ. Give you a few examples of this. He's the object of his father's love. He is hated by his brothers and rejected. All right, just like the Israelites rejected Jesus. They conspired to kill him. He became a blessing to the Gentiles. He takes a Gentile bride. He was sold for pieces of silver, the amount of 20 pieces of silver. He is reconciled to his brethren. That has not happened with Israel yet, but it will, and exalted. And over you see it. It's just, you can't deny.
Yeah, there's no denying that.
So as you read through these 13 chapters on Joseph, think about, how's this picture Jesus Christ? Not every detail will, but you'll see that overwhelming.
So I think it's interesting, the dreams.
Do you?
Yeah,
that he could interpret dreams.
Well, the dreams in this chapter where he has a dream of his brothers bowing down to him, and then he has a dream that even his parents are bowing down to him, and they're like, "What?
I don't think so.
I don't know about that, man." But
it says Jacob stored it in his heart and his mind. There, I don't think it said his heart. I think his mind.
Yeah.
But
but his father observed the same.
How much do you hate your brother, though, that you're willing to intentionally deceive to kill him or to sell him as a slave?
Yeah, I
mean, family situation may have been a little different back then, but come on.
Yeah.
And then how much do you despise him and your own father that you are willing to lie to your dad that your brother's been killed? That's heartless. That's beyond heartless. Mm-hmm. And it's not just one of them. And they kept the promise to each other that they wouldn't tell.
Yep.
That's the amazing thing to me, that not one of them spilled the beans on that.
Yeah, 11 of them, and they can't.
Yeah. Now, they're men by this time. They're, the youngest, Benjamin would have been a teenager, but he wasn't with them. But the other ones, they're at least in their 20s, if not their 30s by this time. That's horrible. Mm-hmm. All right.
So then we get into the 6th day, Saturday, with 38 through 40.
Okay. You still with us? All right, here we go.
This chapter seems, it kind of just is thrown in there, but there is a purpose, obviously, like we're going to say.
They call it a parenthetical, parentheses in there.
So
this would be sort of like the Dinah chapter. This is the Judah chapter.
Yeah, but it's vitally important to what's going to happen.
Yeah, these folks wind up in the lineage of Jesus Christ, so this is really important.
We see the dangers that come with integrating with the Canaanites here. Judah unknowingly sleeps with his daughter-in-law. Yeah, and if you fast forward, you beat me to it, but Israel's split into two parts, and it is not Israel and Reuben. It's Israel and Simeon. It's Israel and Judah.
Right.
And I mean, we could go into
you'll find when we get to chapter 49 next week that there is a prophecy of what each of these boys are going to do, and this ties right into it. So I'll let you read that chapter on your own, but basically they had this rule that if your brother dies, your wife goes, sorry ladies, it's just how it was back then, the wife would go to the next son, and any child that he had through that his brother's wife would keep the lineage of his brother alive. Mm-hmm. Well, you can read all that goes on there. But two of the brothers are killed. They have a younger brother that's been promised. Judah doesn't give the son to her, and she plays a trick on him. And he winds up going into her unbeknownst and has Pharez and Zerah through that, which Pharez becomes of the lineage of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So we'll leave the rest to you to read that on that one.
We don't really
Interesting chapter, though. All right.
So chapter 39, we see Potiphar recognizes God's blessing on Joseph and promotes him to overseer of the house. And then we see what Joseph's self-control and his faith and
there's an amazing thing with Joseph through this is, okay, you were just sold by your family to be a slave in Egypt, and you're bought by this guy. He's owned you. You live now in this man's house to work. You would work out of the fear of your life, but he does more than that. He lives a faithful life, doing his job and doing it well, to the point where it says Joseph saw it. It was evident to him. Then the wife seduces him, and he doesn't say, I can't do this because you're Potiphar's wife. No. He says, I cannot sin against God.
Yeah.
I mean, he had an understanding of who he was and whose he was. Very interesting. He goes to prison. They recognize the same thing.
But she keeps going after him, and in verse 12, he doesn't just he got out of there. He got out of there. He left his garment in verse 12. He left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. It wasn't like, me. No, he was out of there. And
no sin is applied to his record. Him and Daniel are the only two major characters in the Word of God that no sin is applied to. The only thing I would say there is possibly bad judgment of being near her in the room, but I mean, how do you? How do you live in a house or work in a house and can't? So I've never attributed that to him.
No. Well, because he left his garment in her hand, she, out of embarrassment, probably got revenge. Got revenge on him and accuses him of trying to.
And he didn't get killed.
No.
So I've always thought there that he says he was angry, but I've always thought, okay,
come on.
He knows his wife. Everybody knows their spouse.
He knows his wife and he knows Joseph too. So. So he throws him into prison.
He throws him in prison instead of having him killed. Yeah.
Which then in the next chapter we meet the butler and the baker.
And the candlestick maker. Yep.
Yeah. So he interprets the butler and baker's dreams, and one of them's good, one of them's bad.
Cool dreams. Yeah, those
very
are cool dreams.
But the thing that the last verse, I believe, in the chapter, after the butler is promoted, and he forgets Joseph. After everything he did for him, he forgets until the next. Yeah.
But it's God's timing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll see. I mean,
you see God's sovereign hand directing everything that goes on through this part. We get to chapter 41, and now Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, he has a dream. He has two dreams.
So this is the last day. So
2 chapters.
Two more chapters
us.
Sunday.
All right.
In 41, Pharaoh has the dream.
Two dreams. Same dream though.
And nobody can interpret it. None of his guys can interpret it.
Yeah. 2 years have gone by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the butler remembers.
He finally remembers.
In verse 9, I believe, the butler remembers, and Joseph is called up to interpret the dreams. And obviously he does, and he's made a ruler.
Yep. Verse 16 is the cool verse here. And Joseph, after he answers that, and Pharaoh's all thrilled with the answer, he says, and Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So once again, it's not me. It's always pointing to God. He does that in the jail. He does that when he's with Potiphar. He just is a young man that knows who he is.
Yep.
That he is God's son, and we'll see this over and over.
And then he's put over the
everything,
the planning, for the 7 years of famine and the 7 years of plenty, and he's in charge of everything. That's
So in
in
one instance, he goes from being a servant in jail to the second highest person in the Egyptian empire.
Yeah.
What? Outside of God, that doesn't happen. God had to put that on Pharaoh's heart.
Yep.
And you think, where you're at in your life, and no, you serve God faithfully where you are. God he's not preparing you to possibly be this, vice president of the United States or I'm not talking that, but God uses people that are faithful in where they are and what they're doing. And he puts, when he knows that God's, that he is God's person, and God is using him, and everywhere he goes, and everyone recognizes it along the way. Now, there's some cool stuff about that. If you go to a map of Egypt, even today, there is a large lake to the west of Egypt called Joseph Lake. And many people believe that was where he collected water. It was like a man-made thing where they collected water also while they were collecting the grain that goes on in these chapters, which is pretty cool. With the typology here, he's given a Gentile bride, the church with Jesus Christ, picture that, as his brothers rejected him.
Yep. He has two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Is that how you say it? Ephraim?
Yeah. Manasseh and Ephraim, yeah.
So, and then...
Which become two of the largest landholders within Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Two of the so he gets a double portion, which we'll talk about later.
And then the last verse, it sets the stage for the next chapter.
Yeah, chapter 4.
It sets the stage that other countries were coming into Egypt asking for food because of this famine.
Chapter 42, yeah.
And then in 42...
Yep.
Who comes begging for food?
Who comes knocking, right?
His brothers.
His brothers.
Yeah, and
he has. We'll find this out next week. He has some fun with his brothers.
He does.
He's not a punk, but he
he
is messing with their mind, and it is good stuff.
Joseph recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. So he knows what's going on. They don't.
Yeah, it's been like 18 years or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And. Yeah, so.
But Benjamin's not there.
Yeah.
And
he specifically asks questions, how's your dad?
Yep.
And how many of you are there? That type of thing.
Yeah.
And
it's like a movie scene.
Yeah. This is, I am still shocked to this day that no one's made like a multi episode
of Genesis,
show of this.
Exodus and Joshua and Judges.
Yeah.
I agree.
They could do They could do all through Joseph's life. There's different movies and stuff, but you could play this out.
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt.
So he asked them to go get Benjamin and come back so that he knows that they are true men, it says, and he's not just deceiving them. And so the brothers do go back.
And they keep one of them as he keeps
Simeon,
one
right?
in jail. Yeah.
Yeah. He keeps Simeon as like a
hostage.
Yeah, hostage.
And they don't seem to care about him.
No,
he's not mentioned again until he's released. Nobody's like, "Oh, we got to go get Simeon." They don't care. They just don't want to take Benjamin down, which ends the chapter really with the favoritism spilling over again.
Yeah,
Rachel's child Benjamin. He lost Joseph, and he can't lose the other child from Rachel. And this favoritism, and you could just see the boys are just, it spills over into how they treat each other as family.
Yeah, and we'll leave you with that cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Because it is a cliffhanger.
Build up
at the end
into
of this.
next week.
We'll go over what happens because
it's fun.
Jacob is saying, "No way, Jose, he's not going with you."
Yeah.
And then who steps up next week to make sure?
Don't spill the beans.
So I won't. But
so study through these. Listen, ask yourself those questions that we talked about. Looking at your family dynamic and how we see the interactions there, and I think it's worth considering in our lives.
Yeah.
So.
All right,
How are we gonna end?
I got a dad joke for you.
Oh, okay.
So we'll end
you
with
have
this.
the dad joke, not
I
me.
have the dad joke.
I do tell dad jokes though.
Bad jokes or dad jokes?
Both. Yes. I'm not a good joke teller.
All right. What did baby corn say to mama corn? Where is popcorn?
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
Absolutely horrible.
All right, with that, thank you for joining us for our second episode. I hope this will be a blessing to you as we embark together on this year-long commitment of reading the Bible. It's week 2. Stay strong. I know we've said it a few times. Stay committed. Get with somebody who's also doing this and stay accountable with each other. Encourage each other. Text each other. Yeah, and we will see you next week.
All right. Bye.